Good morning again, and for you, those of you who have just gotten here, just like to thank you for joining us, Brevard County, in our first annual Women's History Month celebration. It's really a great time. Thank you. I am very excited today because we have three awesome women that are going to share their story as we look at our 2015 theme, Weaving the Stories of Women's Lives. I am Leslie Jones. I'm part of the Diversity Committee, and we're just excited about what's happening in Brevard County with our cultural events. Women's History Month is an opportunity for us to recognize women for the contributions that they have made in our nation's history, but we're going to also get to share a little bit about these women and their lives and what they're doing. I would like to say, if you take a few moments to go ahead and make sure your phone is on vibrate, we probably need to pause and do that. It's always fun to do that, huh? Hopefully everyone has a program. If you don't, we have people walking through the aisle that can give you one if you raise your hand if you didn't get a chance to get a program. On the back you will see today's agenda. Like I said, from 11 o'clock to 11:30, mingle and lunch, but if you still would like to purchase a lunch, you can do so in the back. From 11:30 to 12:30, we will be doing presentations, and what we're going to do during the presentation piece is one speaker will speak, and we will allow 2 to 3 questions in between each speaker. But after that portion is over with, we're going to have 12:30 to 1 o'clock, we're going to have question and answers, but we will allow for 2 to 3 questions after each speaker speaks, and then all the other questions will take place from the 12:30 to the 1 o'clock portion. At this time, I have the opportunity to announce our county manager, Stockton Whitten. He's going to come and share some things with you from his perspective as Brevard County county manager. Stockton Whitten.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for being here. It is a great day for us as we work to open up county government. I'm happy to be a part of this celebration. And so first, what I want to do, I think my role here is to just welcome our panel of guests. But first, I want to thank the Diversity Committee for all of their efforts. If you recall, and maybe the panelists don't know, over the last year, the Diversity Committee, and I'll say led by Vanetta Valdengo, our Assistant County Manager, has done some wonderful things in terms of opening up county government to our public. You know, we've celebrated Black History Month, we've celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month, and now we're celebrating Women's History Month with a panel of trailblazers. And so we're here to just thank you for participating. You know, we are here to reflect on the barriers that women have overcome and to actually celebrate their accomplishments. And if you understand the history of the U.S., and I know we all do, when we were first formed, women didn't have the right to own property or to vote. And so what an amazing accomplishment over the last several centuries that we arrive here today with, again, women from different sectors of life, but women who are very accomplished. And so I want to say thank you. I want to say welcome to our guests. This is designed to be, I think, an interactive session, and I know you will learn great things, and I know you will have excellent, great presentations from our panelists. So again, thank you. Welcome to Brevard County Government.
Hopefully everyone had a chance to get a trifold if you just walked in. One of the things I want to share with you, we will have 2 mic runners. So if you do have a question, if you can stand, or if you're not able to stand, hold your hand up, and wait till they bring the mic if you have a question for one of the speakers, as we have the question and answer at any time during the program. If you look on the back of your trifold, you can see the different bios for our guest speakers. The order that we will be going today is Gerda Stokler, our Holocaust survivor. Then we will be followed by Carol Craig, who is the founder and CEO of Craig Technologies. And then lastly, Brigadier General Mary Epps. So at this time, I'll announce Gerda Stokler, Holocaust survivor.
No, I can. You can leave it in. Okay. Can I move it down a little bit? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'd just like to clarify something. Although I am listed as a Holocaust survivor, I'm one of the very few that made it out before all hell broke loose. My family was instrumental in leaving in December of 1933 and arrived in the United States in January 1934. I'm going to share some personal family members, some of which suffered greatly and didn't make it, and some of them were fortunate enough, even though they were in the camps, survived. And I chose to have a screen in order for you to have a visual view of the loved ones that I lost. The first one you see is a picture of my father's uncle, who had 16 siblings, of which I didn't know many of them. I lived in Hamburg, Germany, and some lived in Berlin. At that time, Berlin and Hamburg were still considered quite a distance, not in today's world. However, I did have about 8 of them live in Hamburg, and I'll be making notes to share with you at least 6 of the families. The gentleman I'm speaking about is celebrating in July 1920, his 25th Jubilee. He had a very successful business, and he was a rich uncle. He is noted sitting in the second row, has a mustache with a lady that is sitting next to him, which actually was his first cousin. We called him Uncle Emil, and there was another cousin whose name was Emil, so we used his middle name, which was Israel. Emil, Israel. My maiden name was Nashum, N-A-C-H-U-M. So Emil, Israel, Nashum had 3 children that I'll make reference to, 2 of which had very interesting and luckily got out. The first one is Gretel, which is sitting in the front next to the couple that are kind of cuddling over there. And she is leaning, and that's his daughter, Gretel. And Trude is a beautiful, I don't have a pointer, do I? Trude is the one that is sitting behind her dad, is 2 rows up, a beautiful woman. And her brother is on the right-hand side in the second row looking down. Can I use that? Okay. Anyway, they were very privileged children. And so when they went through this hell, it was amazing how they survived. I'll take the next. Oh, and let's go back there for a minute. My dad is sitting in the second row, and in front of him is my aunt, my only aunt on that family. And then there is There are several other people. I don't have a pointer, but we'll just go on. In 1995, the Hamburg Senate sent my brother and me invitations to come back for a 10-day visit. And all expenses paid. We were going to visit the cemetery. We were going to visit the opera. It was really quite impressive. And they also furnished us with books of the terror that took place. And in the books, there are hundreds and thousands of names just from my city that were murdered or committed suicide. And I went through the book and I found all my relatives. And the Nazis kept such perfect records. They had, like, my maiden name was Nashum, so in German it would be geboren, G-E-B. So it would be Hertha geborene Nachum, and then her married name. And this is how they had records of their birthdays, the day they went to the camps, what camps they went to, and where they, Auschwitz, wherever they went, is all indicated in these books. Also indicated in the book is the fact that a lot of were able to commit suicide. Usually it was a family that felt that they wanted to die together, and so they had means of committing suicide. I have the book on the table there. If you would like to see it, you're more than welcome. The next photo is, this is my father's only sister, and she had lived in Sweden and for some reason came back to Berlin. The reason I will never know. And she was hidden by neighbors, and they found out about it, and the Gestapo picked her up, and she was murdered. But prior to that, she sent that uniongram. I also brought a uniongram to show you, the central uniongram, February 1941. And she pleaded with my dad to please make out an affidavit for her to be rescued. But it was too late, and she was gassed in Theresienstadt. This next picture, is that a pointer? Let me see if I can use it.
Press the center. Press that button now.
Huh. I'm not good at pressing buttons and taking instructions. That's okay. I'll be able to manage. Thank you. The lady on the far left, way up on top, and the gentleman in the boat next to him, they were man and wife. She was Jewish, and he was not. He was his name was Willie Schroeder, and he was a wonderful man. I remember him as a child. And she too, they took us to the zoo, and they took us to the fair, and they just were wonderful. And they were happily married, and his brother became a SS, a stormtrooper, and he told Willie, you have to leave her, or you will be sent to the camps. And he says, I'll never leave her, and he didn't. So they both went to a labor camp outside of Hamburg. This was not a gas chamber or anything like that. It was a labor camp which was very, very difficult because they had to do unsightly things and heavy burdens were put on them. They, of course, when the Allies came, they were rescued. And I saw Willie in Amsterdam one year, and then once again in London. And after the war, he was pretty well beaten. And my first husband was about the same size as Willie, tall. And we sent care packages over. Beate, his wife, was injected with potato starch into her veins. And eventually she died of cancer. But they were very hard hit for oil products, cod liver oil and sardines and Spam, if you remember Spam. Well, you're too young. But, you know, Spam was the big thing at that time. And so my dad was able to send them care packages, which really helped them, you know, gain back, I think, some of their strength. Wonderful memories of that couple. And I saw them in London, and I never saw Beate again, but Willie became successful, and that is Beate's daughter on the right, and she's now a grandmother, and we email each other all the time. Oh, thank you so much. Okay. All right. We're in business. The next picture is, the next picture I'm going to show you. Remember I told you about the gentleman, Emil Israel? This is his daughter. Gosh, I have to go to college to figure this out.
I think when we're short, we have a problem.
Let me just, I talk so much anyway, it won't make any difference. The picture on the far right, her name is Gretel. That was Emil's daughter, and that is Hannelore, her only child. This is very interesting. As I told you before, they were very privileged, and when Hitler came on Kristallnacht in 1938, her husband was taken by the Gestapo to the police station. And she was bewitched and bewildered. She didn't know what to do. So she went from one station to another to seek his release. And with her, she took a sizable amount of money, of which I don't know the amount, and she held it in the palm of her hand and showed it when she was entering the police chief. She held her hand like this. To make a long story short, he was released. However, a woman came over to her at the police station and said, "I'm here from Holland, and I have friends here, and I saw in a newspaper the terrible things that are happened to the Jews here, and I have a friend here that I want to see if I can rescue her child. Do you have any children?" And Gretel says, "Yes, I have one child." She says, "If you wish, I will take her to Holland with me and save her. Be here in 1 hour." There was a designated place, I don't know. She wrote a book and sent it to Steve Steinberg. So I don't know what the arrangements were, but she was to meet in 1 hour. And Hannelore and Gretel said, "But I have a nephew, Werner, an only child. Bring him here." And both children were taken to Holland with the understanding then whenever possible, they would be rescued. And I can't go into details because it's very, you know, it's a long story how they maneuvered and finally got the children out and were able, because they had finances, they were able to immigrate to Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I was able to visit them in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Gretel had already passed, had died, but Hannelore, her daughter, and her husband visited the United States very often because he was a director of Norton's Enterprises in Massachusetts. And we got to see them. And on the bottom is a picture of Paul and Hannelore. That's the little girl as an adult. And this gentleman on the far right is my beloved husband I lost 2 years ago. And I'll be talking about him. That was my first date. And my daughter had a dinner party, and I had invited him. The next picture is a very emotional picture for me. because I love children, and I know you all do too. Outside of Hamburg in Buchenwalder Damm is a school. And that school was used for experimenting with children from the ages of 5 to 11. These children came to this facility being dragged away from their mother and father out of Poland, Austria, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, and some other countries within the region. They were just torn away from their parents and put into this torture chamber. They removed their lymph nodes, as you can see, and injected tuberculosis vaccine into their veins. After they did that, they gave them morphine, and then they hung them. I have the story on the desk if you fish. I really find it too hard to talk about it. If you want to read a little bit about it, it's in English, and that was also supplied to me by the Hamburg Senate. There were 20 of these children. After the war, if a parent survived by miracle, they did try to find their children. And there are some indications and pictures where they have. I have a book home. It's written in German, and I have difficulties reading all of it. But it also tells how the parents went and looked for a long, long time for their children. This picture here is special. This is Emil Nashum in the middle. He was a school teacher at a private school. My brother went to a parochial school, and I went to a girls' parochial school. On the picture there is my mom and Ruth and myself and Günther. Günther is the brother of Ruth and my brother Walter. We were very close, and we lived close by, and we shared a lot of wonderful times together, holidays. And you know, those days we didn't have television, so a family union was very, very vital to our existence. We were always together. But the park was usually the place where we would have little picnics, or we would go to a concert, and there was always something to do. We had a very good life. And then on the bottom, it says Root. It was in 1938. I don't remember getting this picture. Maybe my mom had it. But 3 years later, she, her brother, her father Emil, and her mother Ilse were all murdered on the same day in 1941. All 4 of them were gassed. This picture here, I'll tell you a little bit about it. Their mother and father are on this large photo that I showed you earlier, and he was in the scrap business, scrap iron business. And 2 of the boys, Egon, who is sitting on the far right, and Joachim, this is taken in Israel, is in the middle. They came home one day all beaten up, bloody. And their father said, "What happened?" And they said on their way to school, they were beaten to a pulp. And the father and mother were naturally, beyond, they didn't think this could ever happen. And so their father went and asked his friend, who was a Nazi at the time. They were they were childhood school friends and very good friends. And he said, "Something has to be done. My children were beaten so badly. What can be done?" And his answer was, "Nothing." So they had transports from England. I'm sure some of you are aware of it. They had transports from England saving the children. And Egon and Joachim and the sister, Reader up on top, that was us together in London, they all went on the transport knowing that they will never see their parents again because their parents were gassed as well. Egon and Joachim eventually went to Israel, and I got to see them quite a few times. I've been to Israel 6 times. And they're both gone now, but their memory will always be with me because we were very close. The sister Rita stayed in London and became the voice for the Allies for the BBC. And because of her fine work that she performed during the war, she was awarded early citizenship. The Parliament, instead of her waiting 15 years, made it possible for her to become a citizen in 5 years. And then something special happened to Gerda. I would say it was magical. I fell in love at the age of 80. And my husband was 84. It was really magical, and we had so much in common. He was from Berlin. We always said he was a Berliner and I was a hamburger. So together we made beautiful music. I met him at the Temple Israel, where I'm very active, and it was a Passover Seder at dinner, and we sat next to each other, and we just couldn't, our conversation just flew, and we just couldn't be apart any longer. Little did I know, because he never indicated in any way that he suffered or felt sad. He was just a gentle gentleman. And he never allowed me to feel that he suffered, but I found out otherwise. On this photo, it shows him at the age of 16, his mother and his father and his sister. When he was 16 years old, he was notified to report to the police station, and he was given orders to remove himself from the country within 48 hours. Where was he to go? You know, the world was small, and not everybody was fortunate like me to have relatives in the United States since 1920s. So his father arranged for him to, through a travel agency, to go to Peru. Who ever heard of Peru? And he went to Marseille, and he boarded an old Spanish military ship, and 2,800 people went on their journey to Peru, and hopefully to freedom. When they got to Peru, they were waiting with guns, and they would not let them in. And here they were stranded, nowhere to go, what to do. And certainly if they were to return to Marseille, they all would be murdered. So some Jewish agency came to the rescue and said, Bolivia will take you in. And so they went to Bolivia, which was a very illiterate country, high altitude. Not everyone can live in high altitude. And he had a very difficult time adjusting. But being young, he did, and he did endure some hardships with illnesses that were at that time quite, you know, if you didn't have the proper care, you were really in very serious trouble. His mother and his sister, 13 years old, were murdered. His father survived 6 concentration camps only because he was a custom-made tailor and they needed him. And he met someone who also survived, who had never been married and lived in a small town in Germany, an only child, and who apparently had some valuable things, and the neighbor had told her, "Give me all your valuable papers and whatever you have of value, and I will hide them in my backyard. And when you return, these things will belong to you." I tell you, God was good, and they were able to return. And this bracelet that I'm wearing, this gold bracelet, was underground for 4 years. I never take it off. He did reunite with his dad. They tried to live in with his new wife in Bolivia, but the hardship was too great, and they returned back to Germany. And they did come to the United States a few times. I made available to you to see. I wanted you to make sure that you realize how many non-Jews helped the Jews survive. Not enough credit is given, but Israel has taken care of that. And I will always make sure that all of you will know that we are grateful that there are so many good people in the world. In Israel, they made a garden. It's called the Righteous Gentiles. And the garden has the most beautiful poppy. You know, Israel is known for growing beautiful flowers. And the garden is full of, when you walk in, it's just like, I can't explain to you, you feel it's not the street, it's something special that the environment, what you feel is so special. And there's a plaque there which says the Righteous Gentiles, and then they have the names of those that they were able to locate to honor them. And the state of Israel has invited these that are still alive for a holiday of 10 days or so to experience and to show them the gratitude. It is I try to live that every day is a gift. And I feel that today you are my gift. Thank you.
Okay. As I said, we'll allow for, if there's one question that you have for Mrs. Stokely. Is anybody? If not, okay, we have one. And for those of you, others that have questions, we'll be able to get those questions after, like I said, once we get all the speakers.
My name is Diana Vanden Bogart. I'm a friend of Gerda's. I met her 21 years ago when I moved here. She forgot to mention something, so I'm going to prompt her to mention something if you'd rather I did it. Okay. I'm also a member of Temple Israel, but I'm also a member of a wonderful interfaith group called the Sister City of Cocoa, Florida, and Beit Shemesh, Israel. And we are bringing a traveling Holocaust exhibit to Cocoa, opening Sunday, April 19th, and it's going to run till April 23rd. It's free for students, absolutely, totally free for any student from kindergarten through college, and free for any adult who brings a student. And the exhibits were created by children at a school in North Carolina, all art. They researched everything. They've got sculpture, paintings, charcoals, scale models, all kinds of artwork. And the children come with the exhibit. That's what's really special about it. And they explain what they researched and what they created. So it's not a somber, depressing exhibit. It's an uplifting exhibit because children have come to learn about it, and children are explaining to you what they learned. So I encourage everyone to come out to COCO, the Space Coast Convention Center, April 19th through the 23rd. And I'm sure there'll be publicity about it in the newspapers. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday. On Sunday, the 19th, we start at 5:30 p.m. And that convention center is at I-95 and 520, just one block over. Turn left at the McDonald's and you'll find it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me announce that. On Sunday, yes. The Sister City program of Cocoa, Florida, and Beit Shemesh, Israel, all volunteers who have a connection with ourselves and with the people of Israel.
Okay, thank you. Let's give Ms. Stokler another round of applause. Thank you. All right, our next speaker that we have is Carol Craig, and you have her bio, and we would like her to come forward and share her story as she would like to do. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and use the microphone for this. It's very difficult to follow you, Gerda, and you know, it's an amazing story, but it's also very emotional. So I'm still trying to control myself right now. I'm like, okay, you know, focus. But that was wonderful, and thank you so much for sharing, because I know that was extremely difficult. But again, my name is Carol Craig. I'm the founder and CEO of Craig Technologies. Craig Technologies is an engineering, technology, and manufacturing firm headquartered out of Cape Canaveral. We have approximately 400 employees throughout the United States. We're in about 20 different states. 200 of those employees are in the state of Florida, and the majority of those 200 are here in Brevard. We provide services, like I said, the engineering, technology, manufacturing, to government agencies, commercial agencies, and we're really now expanding into commercial through our manufacturing division. And a real quick background, and then I'm going to show you a little video, but I moved down here in 2004 when I had really kind of just started the company, and we still had maybe 5 employees. I was the only employee in Brevard County, and I came here with my 2 children. I had an 18-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son with a severe disability. And we came here not knowing anybody. And one of the greatest things we ever could have done was move to Brevard County, because everything, I will say, everything that has happened to us here has been amazing, and it's been because of the support of this community. It's also been because of the support of some strong women in my life, and I'm going to talk about that after I show you the video, because I do want to kind of focus on that and how important those role models are in our life, and how we as women, the choices that we make now really affect the next generation of women. And I think that's what this is all about, celebrating that. And it's and I have a little bit of more of the personal background that I'll describe as opposed to the business. A couple weeks ago, I was honored by Junior Achievement of the Space Coast, and I was inducted into what they call their Business Hall of Fame. What's really cool about that is because the majority of the people in there are a bunch of old white guys. So it was kind of cool to be able to be, you know, hey, look at me, girl power. I got more girl power that night, exactly. So it really was an honor, and Florida Today did a video, and so I wanted to go ahead and show you that video. I want you to also pay attention to the young woman who is interviewing me, and you're only getting a little snapshot of her, but she was one of those women that you can tell is going to be somebody great, and she has that energy level and excitement, and we had more fun. We didn't care where the camera was. We had more fun just talking and going back and forth. So again, if you'll just indulge me and listen to this short video.
How'd I look? Carol Craig lived her life by the words of famed author Ray Bradbury. Then the long march from the rim of the cave to the edge of the cliff, where we fling ourselves off and build our wings on the way down. Carol Craig jumped off her cliff from her Virginia Beach kitchen in 1999. Her inspiration for jumping? Her adoptive parents, Thelma and Carl Bovard, who instilled in her confidence and determination and early experience with Junior Achievement.
Yeah, I was in Junior Achievement when I was in high school. I don't know if you had read that. Yeah, so I guess my parents put me in that. I don't know how I ended up getting in there. I think they just decided I needed to stay out of trouble, and so they put me in one more thing after another. And this is an after-school program. You're going to do JA, and back then it was the same kind of almost like that Be Entrepreneurial program, and you would do the whole product, take it to market. Of course, whatever we made, it was pretty much only our parents who bought it, but that was fine. It was just the whole principle of the thing, but I never thought at that time that I would ever start my own business. There's no way. I like computer science. I wanted to write code. I wanted to be an engineer. That was it. But that basis, came back around when I finally decided I was going to start my own business. And I think maybe subconsciously, I fell back on that and knew what all was involved, at least those basic phases of, how am I going to get from here to there with a successful business and that kind of thing. So I probably still use that today.
Fresh from announcing blue light specials at Kmart, Carol took her computer science degrees to the Navy, where she became a naval aviator and met her husband, John, a fighter pilot. A few years later, Carol started her one-person consultant firm and spent time traveling with John and eventually with her young children, building her business.
Well, I used to take my family everywhere. Now, that was when my kids were younger, and we moved here. They were 18 months and 3 years old, and so that was easy. My husband flies for the airlines, so he could up and leave, and so we ended up buying a small little RV, because I don't like to fly, and so we would just throw the kids in there, and I could actually work in the back, and we could travel and go wherever, or they would fly with me if I...
And while Carol incorporated her passion, intelligence, and woman's intuition to launch Craig Technologies, she had a lot to learn on the way to success.
So I would research. Google was my friend. I'd go live at Barnes and Nobles. I'd buy every book I could about small business. You know, one of the first things I did was try to buy everything I could to learn about taxes. You know, I always knew that the IRS would not be my friend, and I should learn that side of the business. I hired my mother from the beginning to actually work on my accounting, learn QuickBooks, do all that. But really, it was just learn as I went along.
But even with an internationally recognized and award-winning company, she still sometimes faces the obstacle of being a woman in a man's world, one which she takes in stride, recently maintaining her composure when asked by a man if she knew what a C corporation was.
So I think now is, you know, a great time for women to be able to start their own business or be entrepreneurs. And so there's, like I said, Small Business Administration has programs. There's the Women's Business Center here locally through FIT. It's a huge one. There's other programs like Ignite, Athena. I mean, there's so much out there. Plus, there's a lot of they're like small grassroots type of organizations where women are just coming together and they're just having, whether it's a lunch or it's a dinner, and it's just a chance to talk about, you know, what's going on in your life. And it's not like putting a chip on your shoulder and saying, "I am woman, hear me roar," kind of a thing. Yeah. It's just really saying, hey, you can relate to what I'm going through, and it's nice to be able to sit down with somebody and just bounce those ideas off in a very non-judgmental, open kind of a forum. So,
while juggling her time as wife, mother, and accidental entrepreneur, Carol still finds time to not only watch all of the Law & Order franchise, Original, Criminal Intent, and SVU, she also donates her time to Junior Achievement, United Way, Brevard Zoo, and Florida Tech's Panthers Football Founder Club, to name a few. But this self-proclaimed people-pleaser knows that every once in a while, something is going to give.
Professors, or the provost of FIT once said to me that, you know, it's okay to drop balls every once in a while as long as you drop the ones that bounce. And he's exactly right, because if things fall off and they're not that important, that's okay. You know, just make sure, you know, the priority is on the really important things, which that would be my family, my son with some of his medical issues, you know, and you know, things like that. So I'm trying. Every day I'm trying to figure out, how do I do this better? How do I dig myself out from, you know, this whatever hectic world that I'm in, and, you know, just keep trying.
Carol's move to Brevard County in 2004 was one she has never regretted and adds to her long list of things in her life she wouldn't change.
And it was the absolute best thing I could have ever done. There's no question in my mind that my company would not be as successful today if I hadn't moved here. I mean, I have employees all over the U.S., so it wasn't necessarily in the beginning having employees here and business with different companies here, but it was just this entrepreneurial spirit, this tight-knit family of Brevard County, 2 degrees of separation. It's like high school. It's good and it's bad, right? But we love it. I mean, that's the wonderful thing. Everybody knows each other. We care about each other. We care about this community. And I have lived all over, you know, because of my Navy career, my husband's Navy career, and I've never seen any place like this county. And I want to live here forever, and that's the reason that I'm so committed to trying to help it do well, to give back because of what it's given me.
It's no wonder, if given the option to travel through time, Carol Craig would choose 200 years in the future. Why? So if the world wasn't in a good way, she could figure out how to fix it.
There's a quote that kind of ties to that. It's one of my favorite quotes. Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite authors. Absolutely love him. But his quote, and I'll modify it a little bit, is sometimes you just have to jump and build your wings on the way down. And that's what opportunity is all about. Just do it and then figure out how to make it succeed afterwards. So that's how I handle risk.
So can you tell I love Brevard County? Obviously, I do. I absolutely do love it. So I wanted to talk about it, like I had mentioned, kind of the foundation. How did I succeed? Why did it work for me and it hasn't worked for others? And I mentioned in there that I'm adopted. I mentioned my parents. You saw the white couple. They look like the pitchfork couple, the American Gothic. That really is those are my parents. They live on a farm, and they're just those kind of people. But again, I was adopted. I found out later that my background is Cuban. My grandfather came over from Havana. I always say mi abuela es Habana. That's about all my Spanish that I can do. That's all I keep saying when I'm over there anyway. But I was very much blessed to be adopted by a couple who embraced who I was, nurtured me who I was, and my mother was a very, very strong woman. So as mentioned, I hired her to work for me when she was 70 and I had just started my company. She still works for me and she's 84 years old. She has a master's degree in mathematics education, a minor in chemistry. She worked in the labs for Caterpillar. She worked for H&R Block, and even when I was in college, she worked for a manufacturing facility doing their database administration. I mean, this is 20-some years ago. So you can see she's a woman who's a trailblazer. She's very strong. She's not an opinionated type of strong. It's more of a lead by example, build people up, don't bring them down. And that was the example that I got. Also humility. It was, you don't brag about yourself, you be humble, and I always say take ego and greed out of the equation and you can't help but succeed. Well, that came from her. The background on my adoptive family was that my mother got pregnant when she was in college. She was 20 years old. She was working on a degree, met my father there. He was a musician in the 60s in Illinois, so you can imagine what that was like. And basically she dropped out of college, was pregnant, and decided to give me up. She had to take me home for 3 days because if they hadn't done that, then I would be listed as abandoned. I believe that she made the right decision because I later in life met my biological grandmother, who I'm associated with, but talk about a controlling woman. After I met her while I was in college. I sought her out. I had some information, and a friend and I, kind of did what we could to figure out who she was. I met with her for about 3 hours, and I went home and I cried for another 3 hours. And then I called my parents and I said, thank you, thank you, thank you for adopting. And this is when I was 22, 23 years old. So I knew then that I'd been very blessed to be adopted by this family. And that's why I say, the choices that we make affect the next generation. I truly believe the choice that my biological mother made was the right one. And she ended up having another daughter, grew up, as a single mom, and my grandmother was a single mom, and it was very difficult. And so I would not be who I am today had I not been raised by that family, by Carl and Thelma. And that's why it's so important also for me to provide an example for my daughter. My daughter is pretty much my twin, and I don't know if that's because she's been around me or it's genetics, it's that little bit of Cuban that's in us, who knows. But I always try to tell her, be strong, be confident. She says, but they call me bossy. I'm like, no, you're not bossy. Well, you are kind of, but you're leading. You are a leader, and that's important, and you need to embrace that, and you need to be proud and do as many things as you possibly can, and be a Renaissance woman. Because I don't know if you saw, I play piano and I sing as well as the engineering and everything else, and that's because my parents pushed me to do everything, and they said try everything. One time they rented me a cello because I decided I wanted to learn to play cello, so they rented me a cello for a month, and I played cello, and they couldn't really afford that, but they knew exposure to all these different things was so important. So that's what I tell my daughter as well. Yes, you can do it all. You can play volleyball. You can play football. She wants to play football when she goes into middle school. You can sing. You can surf. She does all of that. You can do all those things. The balance is the hard part, and you want to make sure that nothing suffers and the balls that you drop are the ones that bounce, but it can be done. So that's why I think it's really important that we remember that as we go forward and as we make those decisions, and speaking as women, that we're not only affecting ourselves, but we're affecting the next generation and all of those around us. And so just really, I'll wrap up really quickly here. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, with my company, one of the significant challenges that I battled, I guess, as I grew my company was the birth of my son with a rare genetic disorder. And it was one of the things that really shaped, additionally, who I am today and how I approach things. And I'll make the story very, very short and quick. But when he was born, he was misdiagnosed. He was born into a naval hospital. They didn't have as much, genetic testing and things like that as some of the other hospitals, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. So they did a CAT scan, and they told us that a third of his brain was missing, and he would likely not live. So we checked him into a home for disabled infants that was in the area. We took him home for a weekend, and before I took him home, I asked if I could have an MRI on him just to see. What I really wanted to see was, first of all, what I did wrong, and secondly, how I could fix it. So we took him home. I called back to the hospital and asked for the results of the MRI, talked to the doctor who had been overseeing him, and the doctor said the MRI shows the same results as the CAT scan. So we had to do not resuscitate on him at this point. We took him to this home for disabled infants. 2 days after he was there, we were sitting with the doctors, and a nurse came in, put a piece of paper in front of us. Doctor looked at it, and he said, "You need to take this do not resuscitate off this child right now." And we said, "Why?" Well, actually, the first thing I said is, "Are you sure that's Danny's MRI?" And they said, "Yes." And he said, "There's nothing wrong with his brain." And so as you can imagine at that moment, it's just like, what just happened? And I remember walking out just thinking, what are we going to do now? Our whole world has just changed and flipped to the other side. And so we went ahead and we had left him in the home for disabled infants, and I visited every single day, and I would research as much as I could. I was up all night on the internet, Google is my friend, looking at different genetic disorders, and I would come in and say, test for this, test for this, test for this. They did that. It was a great facility. We took him home, and at 7 weeks, we discovered that he had a syndrome called Prader-Willi syndrome. So for me, that was awesome. I didn't know how I could fix brain damage, but I knew I could fix Prader-Willi syndrome. And so I became very aggressive. As you all know, Mama Bear, get out of my way now. You did it once, it'll never happen again. And so that really did change my philosophy on life. Every day is a gift. I truly, truly believe that, and I look around and I was given my son back. How often does that happen? I'm going to get all emotional now, but how often does that happen? But if you don't take that and do something good with that knowledge and what you've learned, then you might as well not even be here, because that's what's important. And that really shaped my drive, my lack of willingness to accept no for an answer, or this is the way it is, to get second opinions and to think differently, innovatively than everybody else. But it also changed my attitude and helped me be much more compassionate about the people that I interact with, my employees, everyone in general, and realize, like you said, and I'm going to use it again, each day is a gift. And I think that's wonderful. Thank you very much for letting me follow you, because I could use that. Thank you so much.
All right, that's awesome, dude. Do we have one question that we can take before we go to our next speaker? Is there anybody that has a question? Okay, we have one here. And everybody else, just hold your questions till after the last speaker, and you'll be able to ask those questions.
So far, I'm overwhelmed. And thank you all for putting this on. What I'd like to know is that little bitty step from when you had the idea, what the idea was, how you thought you could market it. I know you said you read all the books, but there had to be just one little corner that you turned that said, this is going to work.
I don't need this. I'm loud. I think you can probably hear me anyway. I don't know that it was turning a corner. I don't know if it was turning a corner, but I do know that I did get to a point where there was no going back. And that was when we moved down here to Brevard, because, I had started this company, a little bit of debt, trying to figure out how to do it. My husband was in the Navy, so I had that. That was nice. I could kind of fall back a little if something didn't work out. Then when we moved here to Brevard, he got out of the Navy, went to fly for the airlines, making hardly any money at all. We came over here. I knew no one. That was it wasn't that I knew it was going to work. I knew it had to. And there was no going back at that point. And that's kind of how I look at, going forward and opportunities. I've had a lot of bad things happen, but bad things become opportunities that then turn into good. So that's really how I approached it.
Thanks. All right.
Am I allowed one more question if I talk fast?
Yes, ma'am.
I won't elaborate. Do you have a question for me? Yes. Yeah, what's our core? Yeah, actually, I know I said engineering technology. We do a lot of services, engineering services. So it's the whole. We do software development. We do systems engineering, multidisciplinary engineering. We have a number of employees that are over at the Kennedy Space Center that provide all the support everywhere from engineering all the way down to mechanical. The machinists and things for supporting the rockets. I mean, it's very diverse. Our manufacturing facility builds products, and we build satellite parts. We build parts for commercial space. It's very diversified. So, thank you.
All right, can we give Mrs. Craig another round of applause? All right, our next speaker, someone I've had a pleasure to work with at the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, is Brigadier General retired Mary Epps. And I noticed when I was looking at her bio, she's retired from Wusthof as well. So let's give her a round of applause as she comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad this podium is here. I like to hold on to something when I'm talking. So, Gerda and Carol. How amazing. How amazing. I mean, I could just sit down now, but I talk about being emotional. Let me just say that we're in such a world where we have so many talented individuals. And many times we live in our own little bubble, whatever that is, and we just forget about all the other things that are going on and all the people in this world who have challenges and how they take care of their challenges. And because this is Women's History Month, and we can concentrate on women, think about how we, as women, do our jobs, our responsibilities, whatever the responsibility is. How much get up and go we have. How much perseverance we decide, okay, I'm going to get this done. And if I can't do it one way, then I'll do it another way. I'll circumvent the routine things, and I'll find another way to do it. And this is how, so we've just been told a lot of how that can be done. And I am just so encouraged by what I've heard so far. And so I am going to run through a couple of things. I'm touched. I mean, let me get my act together now. Let me focus. First of all, good morning. What I'd like us to do is to take a moment of silence. It is important that we remember the people who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our country and to remember their families. So please, a moment of silence. Thank you. We all know that freedom is not free. And we know how this country was built. And there are so many people who gave their lives in so many ways. And I get so concerned because when you turn on the TV and you see the kinds of things that are happening now in our country, and I wonder to myself, is it because we did not share the history of how this country was built and the sacrifices that people made? Or is it just the fact that maybe people just don't care? They're in their own little bubble and that's all they want to do. I don't know. But wherever we go, we know that there's always women who can take the helm and keep moving. We see that all the time. I am going to take a few minutes just to discuss some of my history. Most of it has to do with the military. And before I even do that, I have to say, I am blessed to have a sovereign God who ordered my steps. For me, everything comes from God. Consequently, my goals, whatever I did, when I decided I wanted to go into the military for 3 years, His plan was for me to be there for 26 years and to retire as a brigadier general. Now understand, African American female, grew up in New York State, Connecticut, and I was in the military in the Connecticut Air National Guard. I refer to it as puritanical New England. All right, so you tell me, or think about, what were the percentages of an African American female, small town, Connecticut, becoming a brigadier general in the United States Air Force? I don't think so. Now that has changed a bit. We have a number of women who are brigadier generals, major generals, lieutenant generals, and they're doing well because we, as women, will get things done. When I completed my nursing education, one of the things I wanted to do was to go into the Air Force. My parents, being the leaders that they were at the time, said, absolutely not, forbidden. And of course, I listened to my parents. The reason is because in the 1960s, in the military, like various other places in this country, racism was a serious problem. And my parents felt that as an African American female, they were concerned for my safety. And they said, nope, not going. I said, all right. So I just continued to work on my life. I built my nursing career. And about 10 years later, my sister, Dr. Lee, who happens to be here with me today, did some research because we were both interested in the Air Force. And she discovered the Air National Guard, which is the Air Force. So we decided that we would go into the Air National Guard and give it a few years and move on. I retired as a brigadier general. She retired as a full bird colonel. As we know, women have many careers. We could start at home and go from there. For the two of us, we had a civilian career and a military career and a household to run. And I have to appreciate my husband was very supportive for all the times that I was away from home, whether it was military training, working in an operating room, or any number of other things that I had to do to maintain my skills at doing two jobs or two career fields. So, and there's probably people in this room right now who maintain more than one career field. And I take my hats off to you because we know it can be challenging at times, but we do get the job done. Some of my career challenges are traced back to effective or ineffective leaders or managers. And I'm going to run through just a couple of them because I know we must be short on time by now. In nursing, yes, it's a difficult job. It's a job of dedication and responsibility, no question. Whenever I had to do military training, I would ask in advance for time off. I had a nurse manager who just couldn't handle the fact that I was in the military. And she did everything she could to give me a hard time. And even when I had members of the staff who would say, hey, if you need time off, I'll fill in for you, she would make it difficult for them. In my career, in the military career, you have to have continuing education. And so I applied for continuing education. When I got the spot that I needed 10 months off. So I went up the chain. I asked my nurse manager if I could have the time off. I had people who would cover for me. She said no. She just couldn't handle it. So I decided, okay, I'm going to persevere. We as women persevere. We get the job done. I went over her head, and I went to her boss and asked for the time off. Her boss was a retired Army nurse who knew the responsibilities and knew the importance of what I was doing. Now tell me, I had divine guidance there. There was no question about that. Anyway, bottom line, and to move on, so I got to do my military education that I needed. I had there was a time when I was taking my squadron to training. It was in North Carolina, and I'll never forget it. And I had an airman who decided that he knew more than anybody else did. He knew more than me as his commander or his other superiors, and he acted up the whole time we were there. So when we returned home, my wing commander met me at the plane when we arrived, took me to lunch, and said, okay, so tell me what happened. So I gave him the story of what occurred, how it occurred, what I did about it as the commander of that unit. And he said, okay, I'm with you. He had my back. And the following day, he took little Mr. Airman, the trouble person, and took care of him. He really, to use a term, and pardon my vernacular, ripped him a new one. But he was supportive of me. This was a base commander who had given me this job as medical commander, and he supported what I did. But he also had the integrity to find out from me what was going on so he could make his decisions based on that. So mentorship, leadership, I'm talking about leadership. So I had two types of leaders in my career. And they both taught me lessons that I could take to the bank when I ran into situations or similar situations. I've talked about leadership. I've only mentioned a couple of things because it's I'm short on time and I'm waiting for some questions. Mentorship is also very important. And when you're in a organization, you're doing your job and so on, very few people are going to say, hey, I'd like to mentor you. It doesn't happen. However, as I went about my job as a medical squadron commander and hospital commander, I met Air Force nurses, two to speak of, who mentored me from a distance. Whenever they saw me, they would say, gee, have you done this yet? Don't forget, it's important for your training to do such and such. One woman actually sent me to Belgium in her place because she could not go. She was working on a committee, she couldn't go, and she sent me instead. Outstanding divine guidance at work. Absolutely. They both, these two nurses, retired as 2-star generals when they retired. So I had some very good mentoring. One of the things on my own base in Connecticut, when you're in the military, there are certain steps you have to follow educationally. Yes, you have to be known. Yes, you have to be out there working for a variety of causes. And you have to really make friends with a lot of different people. Some people say it's who you know, not what you know. In some instances, that's the case. We all know that in any organization, there is a written or unwritten method of doing things. And so those are the things that we as women have to learn, because we know that gender equality does exist in various places. There was a mentor that I didn't know I had, but apparently I was coming up for a promotion. And he knew that there were people on that base that did not want me to be promoted to lieutenant colonel or to colonel. So he took it upon himself to do the right thing. He made sure that my promotion was going to happen, because he had the power to make it happen. And so again, mentoring, even though I was not aware of it at the time, when I reflect back on my career, he was there for me. And actually, he lives in Brevard County right now, and I tell him all the time about how thankful I am that he did all that for me, and I didn't know about it until it was happening. There's one more thing that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to wrap up my remarks. We're in Brevard County. I'm sure most of you know Patrick Air Force Base. You may or may not know that the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute is at Patrick Air Force Base. It is an institute. It's the Institute for the Department of Defense. It's the schoolhouse for teaching equal opportunity and diversity and equal opportunity training. I was sent to that school, and going to Diomi, we lovingly refer to it as Diomi, saved my career and my life. And the reason I say that is, I've already told you I grew up in Connecticut, in New York State, in the country. Going to Patrick Air Force Base and going to the Institute, they teach us how to deal with people. They teach us about the differences that we all experience, how we were socialized. People who grew up in Connecticut versus people who grew up in the Midwest versus all the ethnicities. They taught us how to become better individuals, how to become better officers, how to become better military people, because we would be exposed to all sorts of people, and we would have to know how to manage our behavior. By going to that institute, I was there 4 years. I loved every minute of it. I didn't want to leave. It saved me, and it saved my career, because when I went back to Connecticut and became a 1-star general, that was when I had the most challenges of my entire military career. Why is that? African American female, first African American at all to be a general officer in Connecticut. Because of my position as Assistant Adjutant General for Air in the state of Connecticut, I had a lot of people to manage. Some of those people were pilots, our beloved pilots. And we know, from a pilot perspective, the only person that is of any value is a pilot. Having a nurse tell them what to do was not, they weren't happy. They just weren't happy. However, divine guidance played a role, and I was supported. That's the bottom line. So, as women, we have a lot of things on our plate. We have a lot of things that we have to do. Do we need support? Yes, we do. If we don't have the support, do we get it done? Yes, we do. It just may take a little longer. And that's really one of the things that I wanted to share. I also wanted to share that since that time, there have been a number of females that have been promoted to general officers, not because of me, but because it's being demonstrated slowly or it's being observed slowly that we can get the job done. We can get the job done. And so why not? Why not do it? As we commemorate Women's History Month, take courage to achieve your goals. Have passion to do the work. Exercise integrity to do the right thing. Persevere to meet the mission and to get the job done. And I wish you all every success in your journey. We've had excellent examples of how to get the job done. So thank you for your attention. And does anyone have any questions?
While you all are thinking of questions, I want to have all the panelists to sit over here, and we will have the first question for General Epps, but I'd like all of the three panelists to come forward and sit here, and the mic runners are there. If you have a question for General Epps, just hold your hand up or stand, and she would be. Now, you know, they say you should never go against a general, but I'm gonna try that. You know, she outranks me in everything, but I'm gonna say when she said that not because of her, yes, it is because of her, and because of all these amazing women up here, these trailblazers. So we just want to take this time just to applaud all three of you again for your efforts. Wow. Yes. Yes. So, where's my first question for General Epps? Mic runner? Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Brigadier General. How do you, mentors were so important to you. How are you going about mentoring other women? Or men, too.
As I told you, I had 2 careers. And so within my nursing career, I was assistant director of an operating room, trauma operating room for a long time. I taught operating room nursing for about 7 or 8 years, and so I did a lot of mentoring along those lines. And from a military perspective, as I came across people who were willing to listen, I would mentor them. And even now, I advocate a military career. I know that with all the things that are going on in the world, maybe it doesn't look that rosy. But one thing we have to remember is freedom is not free. And in this world of technology, etc., we need our brightest in the military to protect our freedom. So I mentor folks wherever I can, anyone who's willing to listen.
Next question for any of our panelists.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to have each of the panelists, who were fabulous, by the way, but could you give me and the rest of the women in the group here your best advice for women in today's workforce?
Think about that.
I've been retired many years, but not from life. And so I would say, as I always have, make every day a joyful day, regardless of obstacles. Don't give in, and thank God for the day that you've been blessed.
My advice would probably be yourself. I've said this before, but the very qualities that women are often apologizing for are the ones that make them so successful. So be yourself, embrace those strengths, and don't apologize to anybody for anything.
Good.
I certainly agree with what's been said. And in addition, I would say to make sure you have your goals. Keep an eye on your goals and decide how best to achieve them. And one of the things that I learned the hard way was I did not discuss with everyone all the things that I wanted to do, because sometimes, depending on where you are, people will throw up barriers and they'll work against you as to working for you. So you have to kind of know who you can trust and who you can't. Have someone who is positive, has integrity, and can be a mentor, and they can give you the support that you need as you're going along your journey.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Just a quick question. In your speech, you talked about how your parents did not want you going into the military. What was their opinion when both you and your sister both went in and became very successful?
Unfortunately, they were both deceased. They obviously were deceased at an early age. So my sister and I were a lot of support for each other. And when I was going through some of my challenges, particularly when I was as a general officer, I would often call up my sister because she was in the Air National Guard in another state. And if I couldn't check within my unit to ask a question, I would ask her commander. And actually, her commander wound up mentoring me in a lot of ways because he knew what I was facing. He knew who my immediate boss was, he would often give me advice. And he was at my retirement when I retired, and I had him sit next to me as opposed to my immediate boss.
Okay, got one here, we got one back there.
General, I know that you had mentioned that when you were a nurse, your nurse manager had a difficult time advocating for you as a woman. And I have often run into that in my career, that women have a difficult time advocating for other women. So I was wondering if any of you would just touch on that and what advice you have for women in regard to advocating for other women.
I believe that it's important to first find out from the individual where he or she is going. You know, what is it they want to do? How can you help? Find out from them, how can you help them? Because a lot of times you might just be going in different directions. And one of the things that's helpful sometimes, I believe, is if you have an example of, say, something that you did and it didn't turn out well, and this is what you learned from the situation, because we all learn from things that we've done. Sometimes sharing some of that information with them might be helpful, because has nothing to do with them. you're really talking about yourself, but hopefully they can read between the lines and learn from the situation.
It's interesting. I think maybe I look at things differently, or maybe in my world it's a little bit, I'm not sure, but I feel like there are a lot of women that do advocate for others, but a lot of women don't advocate for themselves as much. You know, it's easier to help and provide support and advice to others, but it's very hard to maybe stand up for yourself or ask questions, that kind of thing. So, you know, like I had mentioned in that video, you know, there's so many groups now out there that are, you know, forums that bring women together with like interests or whatever they may be. And I don't think there's as much of a stigma on it, as that's the right word, on those kinds of groups as maybe there was in the past. But I think that's what's really important. It's teaching each one of us to be strong enough to stand up for ourselves. And in doing that, we'll be able to, you know, advocate for the others and support the others as well.
Thank you all for coming and for being an inspiration, first of all. But my question is for each of the three of you. You are so busy with your work, careers, and your family. How do you find time to prioritize for yourself?
The only vice that I have is a casino. And unfortunate for me, the seas have been too high for me to go. Therefore, I like to think that my life has been always active. Even when my children were growing up, I did a lot of civic work in West Virginia, Morgantown, West Virginia, where I had a clothing store. And I became very involved in many projects. And that has always been my joy, to be able to do that and find the time to do it. I made it possible to happen. I raised 3 wonderful children and participated in their sports. I always had to play football and get kicked around, and basketball and get my eyes scratched. But those are wonderful memories that I have. And I think at the age of 91, being 92 in June, I contribute that to the fact that I have try to smile every day or make someone smile every day. And I think even though I presented a program tonight, this afternoon, that was very heartbreaking for me to repeat, and I do give speeches on this subject. I still feel that there's a time when I have to be joyful and happy and make a joke or two, and that has become really a vital part of my life.
So Gerda gambles, I drink, basically. It's a way to do that, so that's what I say.
Let's do it together.
I know, all right, I'm in. The one thing, you know, I mentioned that, you know, it's okay to drop the balls every once in a while as long as they're the ones that bounce. I mean, it really is that whole, how do you balance things out? And I know the thing that I have the hardest time doing is taking time for myself and not feeling guilty about it. But like one of the things that I do, I sing in the church choir, and I sing in an early service, and I go by myself. So my family is still sleeping when I go there, and then when they go to church, I'm actually doing choir rehearsal. It's difficult because then I'm not with my husband, I'm not with my kids, but that is the best escape and just calming experience for multiple reasons, of course, but you know, but just to be able to, okay, all I'm doing is worrying about myself and sitting here and just taking it and you know, again, just having that peace that goes along with it. So I do things like that, and I think that's what we all have to do is, you know, how do you prioritize? The priorities constantly change, and to be okay with that is probably what we have to learn to do better.
Mm-hmm. When I was in uniform, and before I retired, or whenever I went, whenever I had to go to a committee meeting or somewhere I had to travel, I would either go a day early or stay a day late. Usually it would stay a day late because I could wind down, sightsee if I wanted to, or do nothing but have breakfast in my room and sleep, whatever. So that's what I did. After I retired, I'm learning to wind down a little bit. My husband tells me I'm always busy, but there's just something about my nature. There's always something to do. But one of the things I will say is I try and start my morning every day by just reading my Bible, and that gives me a way to start my day. And if I don't do that, my day is not very good.
I do that.
Thank you.
I think meditating in the morning, I go on the patio and just look at the water. I live on the Banana River, and I think of how God created what is before me. And I take that time every day in the morning and then in the evening as well. It gives you an inner peace. After having a hectic day, you need that personal being together with yourself. It's a wonderful, I recommend it.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our program, but since no other male has asked a question, even though we have several males in there, let's give the males a round of applause for showing at this event. My question for you is I've heard you all talk about mentoring and how you were mentored by folks as well as mentoring women. My question for you is, because my mother's been my mentor, I have a daughter, things like that, about an experience where you mentored a male or they solicit you for mentorship. Can you just quickly just tell us a little bit about that, and do you see that more men seeking out women as mentors? So
I'll mention really quickly, my executive team is primarily men, and I did not do that on purpose, obviously, but it just kind of has worked that way. I have a couple women who are also on that leadership team. So I think that even though it may not be outright mentoring, obviously they look up to me as the CEO and the founder, and I see the respect, which is actually pretty cool. And and they don't have the chip on their shoulder of, I don't want to take advice from a woman. You can just see they want to learn, because they do know I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm willing to share that without being condescending, without acting like I know it all. And I think that within our company, that's the mentoring that occurs. And whether they stay with my company forever or they move on, I think if they do move on, they'll be even more valuable contributor to another company because of that relationship, the male-female.
The thing that I can think of is I was blessed with 2 sons, and I felt a compliment that they came to me separately for some advice. Usually that doesn't work very well, but I felt that as a compliment, even when my youngest one wanted to go to Myrtle Beach, and that was not going to happen with 3 of his friends, and I think they were last year in high school. And the 3 of them came to me and asked me if I would escort them and go with them to Myrtle Beach. Having been in business, and Saturday usually is a busy time in the store, I did take the week off against my husband's best wishes, and the 4 of us drove all the way to Myrtle Beach. I think that was the highlight of my experience with 3 young men. I put them in a motel, and I had the room next to them. And we all had a wonderful time. And there was one day it rained, so we sat on my bed and we played poker.
I have had a couple of males who have asked advice from time to time, and they were very sincere. They were very sincere, and I hoped I was able to provide some insight for them.
Okay, this is, thank you so much for those responses. This is, we have one question. This is the last question, and then I'm going to have Assistant County Manager Vanetta Verdingo come forward for closing remarks.
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but it sounds like all of you were very lucky to have very supportive families. So the question is, do you think you could have done what you did if you didn't have supportive families?
No comment.
No doubt it would have been probably a lot more difficult, but as I said, my God and Savior is there. And so he's always mentoring me.
That's wonderful.
I'd just like to say that as we conclude, ends my portion. We have some awesome women that work for Brevard County Board of County Commissioners, and I'm just happy that Assistant County Manager Vanetta Verdingo, that we started this cultural diversity events since she's been on board. It's been a pleasure working with her, and I let her come and closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, this is a very special event for me. All of the events we've had are, but this one really hit home listening to you, three amazing women. And I know just in my career, some of the challenges I've faced, and I'm sure you can relate to some of them. I remember finger shaking, and I remember men that were in superior positions saying, "Girlie, they may listen to you now, but let's see who ends on top." Well, I can tell you, I did on several occasions. So I really want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting this event, and we hope you'll join us at future events, and let's give them one last round of applause. Thank you. Thank you all.